Ladies and gentlemen, a reminder, please, to silence all cell phones. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for being here. We are going to begin this service with the chanting of the 23rd Psalm, a psalm that has so much meaning and resonance at this time. It speaks about walking through the valley of the shadow of death, and that on that path we are not alone, but God is with us. And I hope the family feels that loving presence not only of God, but of so many friends who are here at this moment. Thank you. Such beautiful words and beautiful melody. We gather today with heavy hearts to bid farewell to our beloved husband, father, grandfather, physician, family patriarch, Morton Robinson. And though our hearts are heavy, we come today as well to celebrate the fullness of his life and to express our gratitude for the incredible impact he was able to make on the lives of his family and on his community. We just heard the beautiful chanting of the 23rd Psalm, and now we're going to recite those words together in English. So if you are familiar with the words, I invite you to join me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And as it's customary to listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures at this time, I'll continue with the words from the book of Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And this is indeed our time to speak. It is this period of time in the Jewish calendar right now known as the counting of the Omer. The Omer was a measure of the harvest, which was counted between the two festivals of Passover and Shavuot. It is the counting of 50 days between these two holidays. The rabbis say that the counting of these days is meant to heighten our awareness of the passing of time and is meant to teach us to number our days in order to make them count. Mort Robinson was someone who made each day of his 86 years count. He was a beloved husband of almost 55 years, father to Jay and Jenna, father-in-law to Karen, grandfather to Danica and Ben, dear friend to many, and doctor and mentor to many more. He had a great sense of humor, a curious intellect. He loved reading, theater, music. He had a joie de vivre, a passion and joy for life. And he approached people and life with that sense of joy. And so today, though we do come together to mourn, as is customary, we also come to celebrate his living well, his generosity, his wisdom, and his soul. One of Mort's most special qualities was his ability to make you feel seen. He'd look into your eyes when he spoke to you and make you feel like you were the most important person in the world. And so first, I'd like to call upon one of his lifelong dear friends, someone who felt seen by him, John Schulte.
Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the crew of the Chowder Society who is here today. And we, for the last, nobody knows how many decades, have had lunch together every Friday. And you talk about friendship. And it was Mort who introduced me to these fine men and who have meant so much to me and to Mort in his lifetime. I'm not here to give you a resume of Morton J. Robinson. It's all in the program. I'm sure that everyone in this temple today has a beautiful memory of our dear departed Sporty. I can only tell you of mine, which had the most unlikely beginning over a half a century before last Tuesday. In 1968, my wife Joanne had met Jane at a YPO luncheon. And they struck up such a friendship that they spent the afternoon talking about how Jane so much missed Manhattan and how Joanne missed not having moved there after John had promised her to move there before they got married. They immediately arranged for the Robinsons to have dinner at the Schulte's 3-2 cheese box of a house in Coral Gables on Placidus Avenue, which was lined with the most beautiful overhanging black olive trees. The Robinsons arrived in Mort's brand new 1969 two-toned Buick Riviera with a white vinyl Targa top and parked under the female black olive tree. Dinner went okay between us while it rained outside. You know the rest. The white top looked like it had been the bottom of a vat at a purple grapefruit stomping jamboree. I told Joanne that I doubted if I would ever see Mort again, and I'm sure he told Jane the same on their way back to Sunset 3 that rainy night. I never saw the Buick Riviera again, but I saw Mort almost always over the next 50 years, until last weekend when I took hold of his hand, leaned over that impishly grinning face, and kissed him on the forehead and said goodbye for the last time. Mort was not a complex or complicated person. He chose a profession he loved and married the woman he loved and lived in the house that he loved, on the street which he loved, and less than a mile away from the hospital he loved. Mort had few shortcomings. He loved his family, he loved his friend, he loved his wife, his family, his friends, and his profession. He only demanded two things: excellence in his work and Friday afternoons to be off to be with Jane. Mort's only known flaw, if such a thing was, his demand for excellence. As chief of the Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine at Mount Sinai, and on the Executive Medical Committee, on one of many occasions, he was arguing with the hospital CEO, who wanted to bring on staff medical personnel whom Mort did not consider professionally worthy of hospital privileges. Said the chief, "Mort, your problem is that you're an elitist." To which Mort replied, "My problem is you're not." Mort's definition of elitism in his profession meant only those who practice at the highest level of the medical arts and science. Yesterday I spoke to Dr. Rob Papetti, to whom Mort delivered his practice, and passed on the mantle of chairman and director of pathology, whom Mort loved and admired from the day he interviewed Rob as a resident. He told me how Mort fought for the Department of Pathology against all odds. And Mort fought for and how without Mort is unlikely that there would be an A.M. Rivlin, M.D., Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine today at Mount Sinai. He told me how all those who knew Mort had been crying since Tuesday morning. He told me how Mort could be the harshest critic in every respect, including the misuse of the English language, but how everyone considered him the father who always looked out for their benefit and the benefit of their patients. So Mort was an elitist. God willing, there should be more just like him in these unpredictable times. I do not have to tell Jane how much he worshiped her in every way, or how proud and supportive he was of Jay, or that he told me that Jenna was his first thought in the morning and his last thought at night. Mort was my friend and confidant. He was the repository of many confidences and the publisher of none. I will not say they broke the mold when he was born, because there was no mold. He was an original in every respect. Rest in peace, my dear friend.
Thank you for that beautiful tribute, John. Many of you remember, as John said, Mort as a physician and chairman and director of the Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine at Mount Sinai for over 30 years. Mort also served as a captain in the U.S. Air Force from 1961 to 1963 as chief of laboratory medicine at a base in Mississippi. Whether there or in the Bronx or at Mount Sinai, he was a physician who demanded excellence, as you heard, of himself first and of his students. And because of that, he was respected and admired by all. So now I'd like to call up one of his colleagues to speak about his professional life, Lydia Howard.
I wrote some thoughts down on paper. I know he wouldn't be happy with me. He would expect me to stand up here and extemporaneously speak as he used to. I'm not anywhere near the caliber of speaker that he was. But here's some thoughts that I wrote down. Dear Jane, Jenna, Jay, friends, colleagues, I feel honored to pay tribute today to a very special man, my teacher, my boss, my friend, Dr. Robinson. I first met him in 1978 when I started working at Mount Sinai as a medical technologist. We didn't have much interaction then. He was on the first floor, he was on the second floor doing the pathology thing, and we didn't interact. But I did notice that I thought he was a very jolly guy, is how he struck me. He always walked around with a smile. He had a very determined walk, was very self-assured and confident, always smiling. I left Sinai in '86 and came back in '92 for pathology residency, and that's really when I started to get to know Mort. I believe he had three great loves in his life. One, great food and wine. He loved his French wine. Two, he loved to practice medicine. He loved his profession in pathology. And three, he loved his family immensely. That was his first love. He loved the French wine and he loved the cuisine. And he told me a story once about some story about some truffles that got somewhere lost in the post office, and they didn't like their aroma. So they were getting ready to throw them away when he was able to retrieve them. The last time I saw him was last Friday. I was leaving out of town, and I wasn't sure, that I'd be seeing him again before I came back. So I said, I better get there and see him this one time. He had a couple smiles for me, but at some point I said, how can I help you? How can I make it better for you? Would a good bottle of French wine help? And I got a chuckle out of him. He really appreciated it. He had a very good sense of humor, too. Secondly, he really absolutely loved practicing medicine. He was passionate about learning and about teaching. We have to understand that he was brought in a strict era, a very strict household. He told me a story once. He had written this paper that he was actually very happy with. He was proud of that. And he brought it home. It had a B. He didn't get an A, he got a B. So he gives it to his father, but he's happy, with his B. The father grabs the paper, looks at it, and says, oh, a B. Took it up, crumbled it up, and threw it in the garbage. No more B's after that. I think that's where it all started, demanding perfection from all of us. When I started at pathology in the residency, I remember my chief resident took me aside one day and gave me a piece of advice. He says, you got to do this. If Dr. Robinson asks you, did you take pictures of whatever the specimen was, surgical or autopsy, just say yes. Doesn't matter. If you didn't do it, don't worry about it. Just say yes. No matter what, just say yes. He'll forget it later. He won't remember that you. But if you say no, he's going to holler at you. He's going to get red in the face, and you're going to hear about it. And I thought, hey, he's out of his mind. This guy's out of his mind, but I had heard similar stories from other people. Well, I can tell you that I never heard him holler. He never hollered at me. He never yelled at me. He had a reputation for having a short fuse, at least around the pathology department with some of the residents. But I never saw that side of him. But he did expect a job well done. One time, he called me into his office and says, okay, here's my turn. Dr. Villamonte, who many of you know, had complained about my poor performance at one of the radiologic pathology conferences. In truth, he was right. I knew I had done badly. And, but still, I tried to set up some excuse. So I started giving an excuse while he wouldn't hear anything about it. He did this little jump in his chair, but he didn't yell at me. He said, next time, this can't happen. You better be ready. And that was all he had to say. I really do think that he was a little softer and kinder with the ladies, okay? So I think if I had been one of the guys, it would have been a different story. He really liked to hang out with us. He liked to have us around. We liked to be with him. He was always nice, always the perfect gentleman. He was erudite. He was very well-spoken. It was evident that he had participated in Toastmasters clubs. He told me that one time. I said, well, maybe I should do that too. I loved listening to him present the certificates at the end of every year. There was a style and a poise in his speech. He made us really feel special when he handed the certificates, like we have really accomplished something wonderful. And he even made us feel famous sometimes, the way he presented the certificates. The same thing goes for the writing. He would take any paper, no matter how bad it sounded, and he would take the same data, and it would flow and seem almost brilliant, once he was done with whatever, work we had done on the paper. He had a great mind. His depth and broadness of knowledge was great because of his inquisitive nature. He loved to read also. He was a truly good role model for all of us, all the residents and all the pathologists. Lastly, and above all, he was a family man. His family came first. Jane, he loved you immensely. He always would speak lovingly about your accomplishments in the opera music world. And he would very proudly say that he was married to a businesswoman. And every now and then he say that he was really brilliant because he had married a younger wife. He says, I did a good thing there. So he was very happy with himself about that. He extolled his children, gifts and virtues all the time, always praising you, Jana, for your talents in music and art, always praising Jay for being such a good father. The grandchildren he loved so much, he would tell us stories of when they were little, and then as they grew up and started, going to school, about how well they did, how smart, their grades, what their plans for the future were, always sharing this. He was, in addition to all this, he was willing to step up and help people, help those around him. There was an instance when the mother of one of the technologists had some problem with the leg. I don't remember what it was. But there was a problem, and she was out of town. She lived, I think, in West Florida somewhere. She had seen doctors there, and they were meaning to amputate her leg. Well, this woman came and told Dr. Robinson, this is what's happening with my mother, and they want to amputate her leg, and, what do you think? Can you help? Whatever. He found a doctor at Sinai to see this lady, and he saved her leg. I heard the story many years after this lady died. She died, and her daughter told me, my mother died, and she's going to her grave with both her legs, thanks to Dr. Robinson. That's only one story. There were many others similar that you can hear around the lab, because he really tried to help those around him. He had a great impact on my education, not only as a student of pathology, but as a student of life. I will miss his smile, but his teachings will stay with me forever. One of those teachings was, paper cannot defend itself. He always would say that. My teacher, my friend, MJR, had a good and a well-lived life, which influenced most around him in very positive ways. I will dearly miss him. To conclude, I'd like to share a short poem. Well, it was a long poem, but I made it short. From an American poet, Trenton, New Jersey, Patricia A. Fleming. It goes like this. The true meaning of life. The years go by in the blink of an eye, moments of sadness and joy all pass by. Life isn't easy, and the struggles are there, filled with times that matter and times when we simply don't care. But what is the measure of how we succeed? It is how much kindness and love we can show before the Lord tells us it's our time to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. That was beautiful. I'm now going to call another dear friend of Mort's, Robert Freiling.
I don't know how I'm going to follow these two people. But oh boy, this is not where I want to be today. I'd much rather be sitting out there with you watching somebody else make a fool of themselves. But Janie, Yama ZJ, ZJ for Zany Janie, she told me to do this, and it is an honor. But, I was once held up at knife point, and I was really scared. Not half as scared as I am of Janie when she gets cross. You don't ever want to make Janie cross. So here I am. Mort was my friend of 50 years. No, he was our friend, Nancy's and mine. The girls met in an Italian cooking class, appropriately, and within a month or so, they both gave birth to Jenna and Jennifer. And they have been lifelong friends ever since. Both Jenna and Jennifer, and Nancy and Janie. Mort and I fished with JJ and Greg. and we all forged an unbreakable bond. We all spent so much time in and on the water. But I'm not going to tell you about Mort's medical accomplishments. You've already heard them. There are plenty of docs here in the room that can tell you much better than I can. But I will tell you that Morty was really a caring physician who helped so many of his friends through their personal medical issues. And I'm certainly not going to tell you how he was as a father or husband. His family can attest to that, and that's not my job. I am going to tell you about Sporty's love of life, his zest for living and living the good life. The four of us shared so many boating adventures, vacations, dinners, and more. Hong Kong, Myanmar, Japan, Morocco, Egypt, and on and on. Jane always looking for beads. Morty and I looking for a martini. Maybe food was what bound us all together. Certainly it was a big part of it. We ate at top restaurants all over the world. We also ate with our hands in the souks of the world. He could eat and drink anybody under the table. I never met a guy with Mort's constitution. He loved fine cuisine and dining, but he also loved street food and a great brat. And I'm pretty sure that herring was pretty high up on his list. But as much as he loved to eat, a good martini and a fine bottle of wine, that was nirvana. He could really put him away. I was a designated driver. He loved for me to drive, and he survived it. There are a few of you who really don't want to get in the car with me behind the wheel, but Sporty did, and he loved it. I've never been an opera fan, and I know how important it is to Mort and Jane, but I am good for certain things, like getting out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning to go bail him out of the Huskow. And trust me, I never let him forget about that. Most of you know and have already heard that Mort and I had a date every Friday for lunch. He was one of the founding members of the Chowder Society, a band of brothers who laugh, gossip, talk about the problems of the world, and watch the ladies go by while we eat and drink. And I know that we will all sorely miss him. But how am I going to sum up Sporty? He was a very kind man. He would do anything for a friend, as I suspect many of you in this room know. He had great intellect. He was dependable. He loved his family and appreciated their life together. I'll never drink a martini again without thinking of Mort. Sleep well, my friend.
Thank you, Robert. As it said in his obituary, Mort always said that he was actually known in Miami and New York as the husband of Jane Robinson. Jane and Mort met at a party where they spoke for 3 hours, but then he heard that she was attached to someone else, so he left the party. A short while later, they met at a second party, and this time they never left each other's side. They were married 3 months later. As Jane said, it was beshert. After 3 dates, they knew this was it for both of them. Together, they raised Jay and Jenna. As a father, Mort taught his children to always do the right thing and to treat all people with respect. Both of his children wish to pay tribute to him here today. First, I'm going to call on Jay.
Please bear with me. Giving, brilliant, lovable, warm, generous, and funny.
These are the words that many of you and other of our friends used to describe Dad when you reached out to us with your beautiful condolence wishes. If I can add a few adjectives to the list: selfless, old school, good, devoted, caring, strong, prickly, cantankerous, and intimidating, anyone here who didn't know him personally has a pretty good picture of him now. Standing here today is by far the most difficult thing I've ever done. But to honor him and his legacy, let's treat the day as a celebration of his life and not spend too much time on the grieving part. He would have wanted it that way. Sometime in the early 70s, as a family, we were in an Impala station wagon. That was after the Riviera. Driving across the MacArthur and heading to dinner somewhere in the pouring rain. As we came over the East Bridge in front of the Coast Guard station, someone had wrapped their car around a telephone pole. The rain was torrential, and I remember barely being able to see out the front windshield without the help of the wipers, with thunder and lightning filling the air and sparks showering down on the crashed car from the pole that was now bent at a 45-degree angle. Needless to say, it was a terrifying sight for a 5- or 6-year-old. As we slowed and got closer to the accident scene, Dad noticed that the driver of the crashed car was bloodied and slumped over the steering wheel. He jumped him out without thinking, only to help. Seeing him without hesitation administering aid in the horrible conditions immediately made my dad a superhero in my mind. As you've heard from everybody else, family, food, and drink, nature, learning, music, and art were Dad's passions, and he couldn't get enough of any of them. Sharing them with us was his mission. Be it trips to museums, fishing outings, dining at the best restaurants, concerts, shows, or just family dinners at home, he was in his element, holding court and imparting his wisdom. Dad taught by example. He worked hard 6 days a week so he could play hard and provide an incredible life for us when he wasn't working. One of his favorite sayings was, he didn't want to be the richest guy in the cemetery. So family vacations were to exotic places that he had dreamed of going and always were top shelf. I have to admit that during my teenage years, the superhero status that I held Dad to wavered a bit. He would always tell me, carpe diem, and it's never too late for success. My response was usually, I'm going fishing. I think it was my 8th grade report card that he handed back to me, and now I know where this came from. And he said, that's okay, the world needs ditch diggers. Another thing he told me, though, was that if you always do the right thing, you'll always stay out of trouble. That, too, took a few years to figure out, but I finally understood and started to practice the messages he was sending. After much deliberation and some thoughtful adult analysis long after the fact, the source of our conflict became obvious. I still find it hard to believe that he didn't craft a basket of papyrus reeds and send me down the Nile. The years passed and I started a family of my own. Pop Porty became the beloved grandfather to our kids. The conflicts we had during my formative years were now in the rearview mirror. And like the fine wines he loved so much, our relationship only improved with age. Birthdays, holidays, Sunday brunches, and again, fabulous family vacations were where we all bonded, and the kids were able to spend quality time with their pop. It was on one of these trips, actually to the Galapagos Islands, that Dad's health issues started. While hiking up a mountain for the first time in my life, Dad was unable to complete the hike. I stayed with him while the others went ahead, and I could see that he was concerned about how he was feeling. But in typical MJR fashion, he convinced me that everything was fine and that I should go on to see the view from the top. The only reason why I'm bringing this up is to stress the fact that complaining was something completely foreign to my dad. The last 6 months have been a torturous series of hospital visits and treatments that most normal humans could not have endured. But I can say with certainty that there isn't a doctor, nurse, attendant, or administrator within the Mount Sinai complex who interacted with my dad during this time who wasn't greeted with a smile, a quick joke, or a random comment of kindness from him. The only time we weren't quite sure if he was lucid or not when he was in the hospital were after the surgeries, when he wasn't smiling and talking that much. He would always ease our minds, though. When we would ask him who it was on the news he was watching, and he'd look up and say, "Schmucko." We knew he then had his wits about him. I'll leave it to your imagination who he was referring to. Have I mentioned that my dad is my hero? On behalf of myself and our family, I'd like to thank the following people: Doctors Tony Fernandez, Michael Trotter, Michael Schwartz, and Timothy Yates, along with the nursing staff at Mount Sinai for their care and treatment. Doctors Lydia Howard and Dr. Robert Papetti for their help, confidence, and help behind the scenes. All of our friends who have been with us through this journey, your love, comfort, and prayers have been well received and will never be forgotten. Rabbi Pomerantz, Temple Beth Sholom clergy and staff, thank you for officiating today and always being there for us for major family events. The people who helped Dad retain his dignity and kept him comfortable for the last few months: Warren Rich, Roy Lennox, and Hector the Protector. Finally, and most importantly, Vanessa. I don't know where you are, but Dad's longtime attendant, who has dedicated her life over the past year to keeping Dad comfortable and loved at all times, especially when our family wasn't present. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Mom, Dad's most cherished passion, advocate, and protector. The last few years have been brutal for you. Certainly not the way you expected to spend your retirement years. Dad knew how hard you worked to keep him safe and comfortable, and your unwavering love and support kept his will to live so strong. I hope you can finally find some peace amidst the tragedy. Dad, those are some mighty big shoes to fill. The best way I can pay you the tribute that you deserve is by honoring, cherishing, and practicing the ideals and principles that you taught me over the years. You are the foundation for which our family is based, and I'm going to miss you terribly. Thank you.
Well, that's another hard one to follow, but I'm going to try. Hi, everybody. If you truly knew Sporty, you know that he never liked the spotlight directed on him. He spent most of his life shining his light on everyone else around him, namely his family and everyone he cared about. And I am super thankful that many of you are here today to feel the spotlight shining around this sacred space. I have to admit, guys, I don't know if Sporty's a little pissed off, if he's doing that little grin from ear to ear with the magical sparkly smile, but somehow I have a feeling that it's the latter, because he waited a very long time to be the center of attention, and we all know he deserves it. And yes, today we celebrate my father, Sporty MJR. Sporty loved life, and when he knew that his time here was coming to an end, he truly did not want to say goodbye to any of it or us. In a phone conversation a few weeks ago, a dear friend of mine said, "Hey, Jen, would you want to say goodbye to such a stunning masterpiece? Sporty's masterpiece, his legacy, is indeed stunning, reflected in so many things that go far beyond his professional and business accomplishments. If you look in the eyes and hearts of my immediate family, Mom, Jay, Karen, Danica, Ben, you will see it and feel it. And then the extension to my aunt, my uncles, and cousins, you will feel it and see it. And if you look at the person next to you or behind you, our extended family, you will feel it and you will see it. Needless to say, you will see it in my eyes and my heart as well. Sporty left an indelible mark on all of us. And as for me, my Sporty was a constant inspiration. More than anything, he inspired me to be the best expression of myself, to live my life to the fullest, and to cherish every moment. He inspired me to truly see people and to accept the things I cannot change. Along with one of the best choices he ever made in life, Mom, he inspired my passion for music, wine, love, food, adventure, and trying to make the world a better place. Mom, everyone should be as fortunate enough to have an advocate and love as passionate, caring, and special as you are. Take a breath. Sporty was the space between the notes. You are the lyrics. And together, you made beautiful music. A symphony that extends far beyond the reaches of this room, certainly. The melody will continue on. To Jay, Karen, Danica, and Ben, I thank you for supporting me and nourishing me and us as we navigated the uncharted territory of losing our satellite. And to Sporty's caregivers, Vanessa, Warren, Lennox, words cannot express how grateful we all are that Sporty was constantly cared for with such dignity, professionalism, and warmth. Where's my Vanessa? Tu guapita, Vanessa, who named our Sporty Sexy Boy. What you did for my father in the last year of his life was otherworldly and angelic. He trusted you, lit up when he saw you, and loved you. You will be my stepsister forever, and we will always have something in common: the love of a sexy boy. It goes without saying that my dad's spirit and inner strength was truly immense. He fought battles, made decisions, gave medical advice, and advice in general like no other I've ever experienced thus far. His loyalty, commitment, generosity, caring, and love was unparalleled. And yes, I must admit, it has made it almost impossible for me to find a suitable man for myself. Thank you, buddy. Sporty was a warrior on every front, not only inwardly for himself, but for me, my family, and many of you. In turn, many of you fought for him when he needed you the most. I'll leave the stories for another time, but John Schulte and Robert Frailing, I've always been and will continue to be grateful to both of you, Sporty's fiercest and most caring allies. I think I'm going to close by sharing a photograph that Sporty gave me. It says, "People always expect more from you when you have naturally curly hair." What it really should have said is, people expect more from you when you have naturally curly hair and you're Dr. Morton J. Robinson's daughter. Sporty, sporty, sporty. If anyone knows this, it's you. I will continue to keep attempting to be the best version of myself as possible. I will continue to try to make the world a better place. And even though it was a wild, wonderful adventure, I will try not to join the circus again. I also want to thank everybody the way Jay did, but I think I'm going to just say from my heart that all of you here, Rabbi, our friends, our family, the caregivers, all of you, my friends who flew in to keep me strong and to help me walk through this passage in my life, I will always remember, I will always be grateful. Dr. Fernandez, you as well. Dad, Sporty, thank you for including me in your masterpiece and for my truly blessed life. To infinity and beyond. Until we meet again, I love you. And as you said to me just a few days ago, to the depths of the earth and as wide as the sky. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna and Jay, for those extraordinary tributes to your father. And I get what you mean about the curly hair. Mort was a role model and revered not only by his children, but his grandchildren, who he was blessed to have love him just as he loved you. So I'm going to call up Danica and Ben to share some thoughts.
Pop-Pop, Sporty, Spomo, Doc, whatever you called him and however you knew him, you loved him. There are endless amounts of things about my Pop-Pop that I'll miss, but there are certain ones that I'll miss the most. I'll miss the way he made sure he got a kiss from my Yema every time she entered or left the room. I'll miss Yema yelling at my dad every time he poured Pop another martini. I'll miss the way he responded to every other sentence singing a line from a show tune. I'll miss his mind and the stories he would tell me. He could tell me a story from 60 years ago like it was yesterday, and I can't even remember what I had for breakfast this morning. Most of all, I'll miss his smile that lit up any room. I've never met another person that when they smiled, I couldn't help but feel happier. Even though Pop-Pop is no longer physically with us, his spirit, impact, and love will live on forever.
Morning. Thank you all for being here to honor my Pop-Pop. He was a bit of a superhero to me. He was always the smartest and wisest person I knew. Sorry, Dad. I could always go with him with any question I had on my mind, and he could either give me the answer I was looking for or some form of advice for me. Or he would also ask me questions because he liked to make me think. He wanted me to be a critical thinker like he was, I'd like to think. He was always caring and willing to listen to whatever nonsense I had on my mind. And he was beyond generous, often taking our family on beautiful vacations so we could share his love of nature and new places. He installed a love of travel and sense of adventure in me that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. I'm going to miss all the Sunday brunches we shared together and sitting in my living room with him and my dad yelling at the TV, watching the Heat. Mostly I'll miss his great sense of humor and his great smile that he always had on. One of the things that will always remind me of him is the vanilla ice cream. Whenever we ate vanilla ice cream, and I mean every time he'd sing a jingle that went, "Oh, you vanilla," that I'm sure my aunt could sing better than I could. I will hear those words every time I eat vanilla ice cream from now on, and I will always think of him. Pop-Up, I miss you always, but I have so many wonderful memories of you that I can hang on to. You're a role model to me, and your guidance and love will carry me through life. I love you and hope to become the man you'd be proud of.
I know he was deeply proud of both of you, and you both spoke beautifully. Thank you so much. As we conclude our eulogies, I just want to remark that it is significant that this week's Torah portion is called Behar, which means on the mountain. Mort always used to say, "I'm going to live on the mountaintop." And that was his way of expressing his desire to live as an exemplar of integrity and generosity. And that's how he will so obviously be remembered, as a person who cared deeply for others, lit up the world with his smile, and was a gentleman for all occasions. Zichrono livracha, may his memory be a blessing to all of you. Amen.
We're almost done, but I have one more thing I want to share with everybody. Many years ago, I wrote a song that none of you have heard. It's a chant, it's a hymn, it's a message that was given to me by a Sutu warrior named Sabata. And he named me Refilwe, which means we have been given. And I sang this song for my dad once, and he said, "Oh, that is so beautiful. What is that?" And I said, "It's something I wrote thinking of you." I'm gonna try and do it. It's quick, but it's from my heart. Rich is the earth, wide is the sky. Listen to nature, listen to life. Long is the journey, simple and true. Happiness lingers in shades of blue. Refilwe, refilwe, refilwe. walking through the diamond forest, I finally found the gold. And as I walked and walked and walked, I knew I'd found my soul. For not the shine of the richest stones or the blackest rocks of ore could trade the place of my own smiling face, swimming towards the shore. Refiwe, refiwe,
Thank you, Jenna. As we near the end of our service, I just want to make a quick announcement that in the program, it says that the family will be receiving people immediately following interment, and there is a correction. It will be at 6 p.m. Tomorrow evening, the family will be sitting Shiva from 6:30 to 9:30 with a minyan at 7 o'clock p.m. God, you give us loved ones and make them the strength of our life, the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft on a lonely way. But you are the living fountain from which our healing flows. To you, the stricken look for comfort and the sorrow-laden for consolation. O God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures and the soul endures, as you, O God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. They weave a timeless pattern in a world that is the dwelling place of your love and your glory. And as you're able, I invite you to rise. El malei rachamim, shochen bamromim, hamsei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina, im kedoshim utohorim kezohar harakia mashirim, et nishmat Munash ben Ruvain verivka, shahalach laolamo, Baal harachamim, yastirehu beseter kanafav laolamim, vayitzror bitzror hachayim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Dr. Morton Robinson, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting peace. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this portion of our services. On behalf of the family, thank you for your attendance. We'll now follow in procession to Lakeside Memorial Park, located at 10301 Northwest 25th Street in Doral. If you're going to the cemetery, please go to your cars immediately and turn on your bright lights and flashers. We must drive carefully. We do have traffic escorts to guide us. Now is not the appropriate time to stop and visit with the family. Let us move onward promptly to the cemetery, and you'll have time to visit with them later. I would like to ask the family's pallbearers to please step forward at this time. Friends, remain at your places, please, until after the family has exited the chapel. Thank you very much.